Okay, I know that I am late at doing this, although it's usually the first week, but we're in January 10th, so I am a little bit late in getting this out there. But every year I do like to go back and sort of recap the decks that I have done walkthroughs of. So, it's one thing to do a walkthrough and sort of first impressions. Sometimes it's because I've sat and worked with them, but a lot of times they're first impressions. And so I do always like to come back and kind of say, did I get around to being able to use this deck? What do I think about it? Like, what are my impressions after some time has passed? Obviously, in some of the more recent ones I've reviewed, I haven't had a lot of time, but I still like to recap everything. So there's no order here. I have kind of piled them in, piled them on here. And so I'm not going in any kind of order of best to, best enjoyed to worst enjoyed. Sometimes I get decks that, I know I'm going to use a lot. Some decks are decks that I love for collection, but I don't necessarily think that I'm going to use it a ton either. So my expectations are different on different decks. For example, we'll just start right here. This is the Cartomancer poker deck, the archetypal playing cards. I purchased this from Kickstarter because it had been out of print for a while and I had always wanted it. And so I have a cartomancy collection. I think that's a fair thing to say. And so I had just always wanted it because I love cartomancy style decks, but I don't use them a lot in my professional practice. People don't purchase a lot of cartomancy style readings. Generally, those are playing card readings, or I'm using Nellie's deck, as that's a full fortune telling style deck as well. So I don't, in my professional practice, I don't do these types of readings a lot. So I don't have a lot of reason to pull this, and I didn't purchase it with that expectation. So I really haven't used this. I love it. It's in my collection. It was kind of purchased for that reason, and it may get pulled out randomly when I'm just in the mood to pull it out. But most of my cartomancy is a playing card deck or Nellie's deck, because Nellie's deck was, again, made for me for what I was looking for in cartomancy. So I love I love everything about this, and I'm really glad that I have it and that I added it to my collection. But I didn't really have any expectation that I was going to be doing a lot of readings with this. So I feel the same way that I felt about it before. I think it is a system in the sense that you will have to get to know it and get comfortable with it. I have such a definite way of reading playing card divination that it's harder for me to use the decks that either are just randomly placing images on playing cards, or has their own very specific system with playing cards, because I already have such a specific way of reading with playing cards. It just is, I'm not going to grab for it because I'm going to use something that lets me read the way that I read. Hopefully that makes sense. So some of these things I didn't have expectation that I was necessarily going to read them with them a lot, but I'm still perfectly happy with them. So for example, again, I am thrilled with this purchase. I have no regrets, and I think it's a really cool deck. So there's that one. Got that one out of the way. All right, we're just, again, I'm no order, except for I'm clearing space to cause me to have less feeling of restriction. This is Tarot of the Fairy Folk. Again, I had no expectations with this one. I think it's adorable. I actually have used this for a client, and she's just open to working with it. I think she had seen me do the walkthrough of this maybe and had mentioned it. I can't remember how it came up, but anyways, I have used this for a client. And because I don't actually like even Brian Froud's fairy oracles, which I have combined at the moment. Sometimes they're combined, sometimes they're separated. Hush Tarot for me is a Fae deck. I don't use really Fae energy decks very often with clients. I do think it's wonderful, powerful, but tricky energy. And so obviously, unless it just suits the situation or suits the client, I don't use them a lot in general. So I have not used this a lot. I am glad to have it. Again, it's a bit more of a, there's very few Fae, what I would really this is fairy folk, not Fae. And I think it has that feeling of fairy folk, but it does have liminal space, Fae energy as well. The artwork is less realistic, I would say, than say the Brian Froud's Fairy, so it has a different almost storybook feel to it. That in the case of storybook Fae, I would really lean into using the John Bauer tarot. So this would not supersede the John Bauer for me, but it's not something that I have any plan of getting rid of, and it's certainly going into my collection. And again, in terms of expectations, I really didn't have any expectations of using this a bunch. I just, like having it. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to get this off the way. And then this is not part of it, but I just grabbed them together because that's how I've been reading them. So this is one I did a comparison video on from the original Moonchild, and this is the Moonchild Tarot Shadow Edition. And I had mixed, I think it's gorgeous. And had I seen this one first, I 100% would have, let me turn my phone off. I 100%, would have been just as intrigued by this one as I was by the original. And as I said in the other one, I do use the Moonchild. It's the one of her decks that I like the most. And I do actually use it quite consistently, mostly in my either Journey with Grief readings, or I have a Port in the Storm reading. And so that's generally what I use the original Moonchild for. And I have to say that since I've gotten this deck, this version of it, I have exclusively grabbed this one because I use it with the Ocean Dreams Oracle for, again, that Port in the Storm reading. And so again, if you have the Moonchild and you don't want a second one, right? It's not a main deck for you and you don't want a second one. I don't think obviously you need this version of it. If you don't have either, it's going to come down to watching those comparison and seeing, do you like more of the original deck or more of the secondary deck? I do like the purple vibe of this one, as it feels more moon-like than the original Moonchild, which feels more sun and warm. So it's interesting. I have used them a little bit for myself in sort of a full moon, new moon kind of way, but not a whole lot. Regardless, I'm still really happy with this. I knew that I was questionable even when I got it, but I love it. I love the Moonchild. So I feel pretty much the same that I felt when I did the comparison, but I will say that I have used this. I have not picked up the old Moonchild since I got this one. And again, I really exclusively use it in conjunction with the Ocean Dreams, and that combo for healing work, especially my Port in the Storm readings, it works. It's not that I only use this combo in my Port in the Storm, but I just have a couple combos that I use, and this is one. And when I grab this one, I haven't once grabbed the first Moonchild. So, take that for what it is. I don't regret it. So, there we go. I guess we're doing this one because it's right. Again, I'm no order here. I am just grabbing what's in front of me. I love this deck. This is the Ephemera, or yeah, I'm sure I'm saying it wrong now because I didn't go relook it up. I think this is absolutely beautiful. I actually don't do a lot of straight up tarot readings. I really don't. A lot of my tarot readings are in conjunction with some other decks, and they are often, centered around several, different decks that tend to, I just put out a video like on my key favorites and my most used decks. My most used tarot deck is the Crow Tarot, because of the coloration of it, and because it's pip-like. And so the coloration plus the fact that I read it like a pip deck means that I use it a lot. So this I have not used this deck for clients. I think it's gorgeous. It is still on my front space to do some more work with because I actually absolutely love the Major Arcana. One of the problems for me as a professional reader is that because if somebody does request a tarot reading, and this goes for a lot of different decks besides this one, but because when somebody does a tarot reading with me, if one of my straight general tarot reading, and I pull a deck that has changed a lot of the names in the majors, it just doesn't work, right? I do have a lot of clients who, and I learned this early on when I used a couple decks that changed the names. They don't tend to appreciate that. Even if the reading was great and everything, it doesn't matter. They can't go and pull the same cards for themselves, and they don't recognize the cards. And so it really is not something I tend to grab for client readings because they can't put those cards out themselves and pull them, and they just don't recognize it as their expectation of the tarot reading. So for clients, this isn't something I would grab, and I actually don't do a ton of straight tarot readings for myself. So this has not gotten a lot of use, but I still love it. I follow the creator on Instagram. He did a great video talking about, you know, the majors on Instagram. So I definitely recommend checking that out. I don't know if you go back to the walkthrough, I'm sure it says there. I don't know if I was just going to see if it was quickly something I could read. Nope, that's a quote. But I would recommend, if you have interest in this deck, I would recommend checking out, and I don't know, I think it was maybe Matt, Auryn. I'll try to remember to put a link, but I'm so bad about that. I recommend searching this on Instagram because it was a great video kind of walking through and talking about the majors. It was really interesting, and I greatly enjoyed it and continue to follow it. So this is one of those ones that I love it. I love the concept of what he's done in the majors, but I'm not going to grab it for professional readings, which means it's just not going to get on the table a lot. So this is definitely staying in my collection and staying in my favorites, and something that I will come back and explore, maybe in exploring decks that do different things with the majors, because I actually really love that about it. It just isn't as practical for, again, for doing client readings with their expectations of what the cards are going to be. So that's that one. Again, I haven't had that on the table too much. This is the Raven's Dream Tarot by MJ Cullinane. Now, I do use her decks that I have a lot. Her Urban Crow Oracle, I use a ton. Her Crow Tarot is one of my main tarot decks that I use. Her Forhaxa Tarot, I use her Forhaxa and the Urban Crow for Port in the Storm readings. I have also now used this one for that. I actually have used this quite a few times, and I really enjoy this. It has a very different feel than the Crow Tarot. It definitely has much more of a shamanic feel to it. It definitely has much more of a dreamscape. It does feel like her Guardians of the Night Tarot, which I also love, but it definitely feels like a fully functioning Oracle plus tarot. And this kind of, not as much as that, but it leans in that direction. There's such a dreamscape and a secondary underlying thing of these dream worlds that you enter into, that it does kind of feel like a blend between a tarot and an oracle done really well. So I have really enjoyed this one. Again, I tend to do readings that lean into that realm of liminal space which dreams inhabit, and so this like lends itself well to that. I also do use her other decks a lot, and they do mix well together. So I've used this quite a bit, and I really love it. It works for my style of reading. It works for my other decks that I do use, and I do really like the dreamscape and looking up, okay, what is this dream that it's entering into, and what other layer does that that give the reading. So I have really enjoyed this one 100%. No regrets on that one. I don't know why I'm saying it in that way, because some of these were sent to me some of these I purchased, and like that one, and some were sent to me, but I don't tend to regret decks, even if it doesn't end up being something that I use a lot. I also don't read all of the books on my shelves, but I still enjoy having them and being able to grab them when I want them. So I don't tend to regret having an experience with a deck, even if I don't have 100 experiences with that deck. I learned something. So I'm saying that, but I really am not one that tends to regret. I've had a couple regrets in deck purchases, but very few. Considering how many decks I have purchased, very few regrets. I love this deck. Again, this is one of those, this was a gift, and this is a deck that I love. This is the Tarochi Vintage version by Mr. Freeborg. And I love this. I haven't used it a lot, but I have used it for I wouldn't probably use this for clients, except for in like, I would use this in an ancestor reading. It would depend, it would be one of those things of knowing my clients that they wouldn't find this to be creepy. Like, I don't find this to be creepy. I feel this feels very ancestral, which I probably said in the walkthrough. I've used it for myself in ancestral readings. I did pull it out for the sort of major ancestral readings, moving into the the Peak of Autumn. Love the backs. Like, I just love everything about this deck. I wouldn't use it a lot with clients. A lot of clients don't love pip decks. It's just the way it is. Certain clients do, and it has got a different kind of a theme and style, but I would use it for certain people's ancestor readings and be confident in that. For myself, I absolutely love this deck, and yeah, I didn't purchase it, but if I did, I would have no regrets on purchasing it, because it's just fantastic. I think this is just really well done and really imbues a sense of working with ancestral energy without being something specific to that. So absolutely love this deck. Okay. Oh, here we go. Let's do an oracle. We haven't done an oracle yet, or for a while, if at all. I don't even know now. This is the Thistledown. Now, I have a second copy of this at the cabin that was like a test copy, I think, from when I did the walkthrough. It was sent for a walkthrough. So this is the final version. Then I put the other one down there in my collection, so I don't have to move it back and forth. I love this deck. I have used this. I love the Oak, Ash, and Thorn Tarot. I love the Smoke. Is it Smoke, Ash, and Ember? Smoke something and Ember, the dragon one. I absolutely adore Adam Ohler, Ohler. I love his artwork. I follow him on Instagram, and I love the creator of this deck, Stephanie Burrows. I like what she creates. I love his artwork, and I use those decks a lot. So obviously this goes beautifully with Oak, Ash, and Thorn Tarot. So yeah, I don't have anything bad to say about this. I love foresty decks. I like animal decks that aren't like straight up like this is this animal and here's this. I like that there's just animals in here, but it's, has major themes that aren't specific to an animal. It's not an animal deck. There are just lots of animals in it. And then there's dragons in it. So it just, yeah. If you like, Oak, Ash, and Thorn, if that's a deck that you like a lot, this to me is kind of a no-brainer. I love their work. I think together they make a great team in terms of decks, and I have used this and will continue to use it. So, yep, that's a great one. This is Beauty of Bones Tarot. And I actually really like this deck as well. I don't use it a lot, but I use it in conjunction with a Mary Oracle. And again, feels very ancestor. The times that I've used it has been in ancestor space. Um, I do lean a little more foresty, shamanic-y, a little more Raven's Dream is a little more my personal practice. And so versus, you know, I do have a connection with Mary. I do have a healing space with a couple Mary decks had set in that kind of tap into that comfortable Catholic experience that I had prior to really fundamentalist Protestant that didn't, you know, end up leaving a great taste. So this kind of leans into that space. And so I have used this deck and I enjoy it. I would never use this for clients unless it was requested. So this for me is a personal deck that I keep in that specific space. And just like I don't read the I don't even know what that big tarot deck that I'm blanking on it. That's it's a Mother Mary tarot deck. I have that, love that, would never get rid of it. Use it very rarely, but it's a powerful like piece. And same thing with the Mary Oracle. I don't use it a lot, but there are times in which I want to enter into that space, light a candle, and it fulfills that connection. And so that's where this, I love the back of this. So that's where this kind of fills the spot. And so, and this is not Mary, so this is not a Mary deck, right? This is Beauty of Bones, but it feels like sort of Mary energy for me, and that's where I end up leaning into it with. But again, ancestor work, and generally in conjunction with the Mary Oracle. So I've been very happy with it. It's just very rarely that I step into that particular space. Even with my own ancestor work, I'm generally more casting bones, pulling more earthier style decks. That's just my practice. So it doesn't get as much use, but I enjoy, like, for example, speaking of, like, something like this is much more in attunement with sort of the types of decks that I would pull. I have not used this, and I pulled it out. I have a couple decks, including the Glowwood Oracle that I did a review on a couple years back that I really want to lean into and use more. This for me could easily be pulled similar to my Crow Tarot, as a pip deck, right? But the coloration and the foresty mushroomy feel would go very much with a lot of the decks that I use. So I would not hesitate to use this basically as a pip deck. Then you have the underlying mushroom energy that you can pull in as that secondary sort of oracle use. But I have not used this. I pulled it out. I put it front and center because I want to work with it more this year. I think it's gorgeous. Again, the coloration, from what I have seen, I really like the associations. I think that it's very mindfully and intentionally done, and I am looking forward to working with it more. I just have not done so yet. So that's all I can say about that. I haven't used it, but I can see this again functioning like the Crow Tarot. The Crow Tarot is a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but I don't read it that way at all, and it's just busy enough and crowy enough that, and no people enough that I can just roll with it as just a basic tarot deck that, you know, doesn't, I just read it how I read it. And that's how I see this fitting in the same tones of colors. And then if I want to lean into the mushroom, I can. And I think then this is going to be a very good, again, I need to do a video on those few decks that really nail the combo Oracle plus Tarot. Similar, I guess we're just kind of rolling for similar to the Witch Sisters. I've already talked about this in a couple videos, but for sake of, I have not had this a long time. It may be my latest walkthrough, but this I have used for myself and clients. Again, there's only there's only certain ones I would use this with, but I have been able to use this in a few client readings as well as readings for myself. I also used it for my year ahead reading. And while it works like Tarot of Hidden Realms perfectly as a just straight up tarot deck with the witchy undertones, ancestral undertones, the writing in the guidebook, keep the guidebook close at hand, I think, on this one, because I have found, and the example I used before was this one. I have found that while I can just use this as the Eight of Waters and the Eight of Cups and talk about the Eight of Cups, how I always interpret that card, I also can then go, and I do that first, but then I can go into the Selkie energy and have found it to have really profound messages adding to the reading itself. So, you know, there are certain decks that nail the underpinning theme so that it is actually supportive and not distractive, and does create this perfect balance between a tarot deck and an underlying oracle theme. There's not a lot that do it well, but when it happens, it's really a treat. And this is one, and I have a feeling the same thing with this one, say like the Herb Crafters Tarot, again, the Guardians of the Night Tarot, the Raven's Dream, I think it does as well. Spirit Keepers, the one with the pastels that I can never remember the name. So there are a few like that, and I do think this will go in that direction, and I know this does. I love this deck. This is currently my favorite deck. Like, as a personal deck, other than like my own decks, right? This feels like ancestral energy. This feels this just feels very in conjunction with my personal practice. And so it feels like a very personal deck. And so I love that deck. So that's the Witch Sisters tarot. But I urge you to, even though I always read the guidebooks, but I don't often refer back to guidebooks. This one, I would urge you to refer back to the guidebook, because there's lots of great layers there. Okay, so that was that one and this one. Okay, let me adjust here for a second, and let me put these into here so I don't lose them. One that didn't quite hit the mark, and this is not, I truly can't say that what the reasoning for that is. This is similar in the sense that I love this artist, Natasha, I'm not sure how you say her last name. And I actually also like Sasha Graham decks. This one just didn't quite hit the mark for me. I absolutely love Compendium. No. Is it Compendium of Witches? Yes, Oracle. I love that Oracle deck. And this is beautiful. Again, I love her artwork. But the Compendium of Witches has an umph to it. And that's what I even talk about with the Witch Sisters. There is an umph to that deck. And this is beautiful. And I do not think it's a bad deck. I think it's actually a wonderful deck. And I'm not going to get rid of it. It's something that I'm going to keep, but it just doesn't quite have the I don't believe really that anything too bad has ever happened to any of these people. Like, I don't quite feel that visceralness. Or walking in the presence of the seers, that some of her artwork for the seers does have that feeling. So I think it's a beautiful deck. And I have several Llewellyn decks that are kind of that way. So I think these can really hit a spot for some people, 100%. But it was for me because of how my connection with the Compendium of Witches, and on those feeling like you're like entering into the presence of an oracle, my expectations were certainly high, and the artwork is beautiful. Like, everything is beautiful about it. It just didn't quite hit that or feel like a fully engaged world for me, that has both highs and lows and darks and lights and all that. Didn't quite feel that fully rounded. So yeah, I have not used it since, even though it's beautiful. I love the artwork. I don't foresee myself getting rid of it. It would be kind of part of my collection of these like Llewellyn decks, but and maybe someday, you know, there's those right moments where you go to grab it, but I don't see it being something that I grab very often. So that's where I am with that one. I still think it's beautiful. It's just I'm always going to pick, there's other decks that I'm going to pick, such as the Witch Sisters. But I cannot use the Witch Sister Tarot for everybody, right? That is a very visceral deck. It has a very deep oomph to it, and it has a very confronting energy and a take action energy that isn't for everybody either, and it's not for every reading. So it's one of those things that I wouldn't use that. I'm probably not going to do tons of readings outside of for myself, except for in specific cases where it works with a client. So that, I think, is the case with any deck that has a strong feel of one thing or another, that it does sometimes, as a professional reader, limit where you're going to use it. Whereas something that at least feels open, like say the Crow Tarot or the Lost Forest Tarot, something like that, that's beautiful but retains some openness to be used in a lot of different situations. Those are different types of decks that you get more work using as a professional reader, when you're not necessarily wanting to pull one type of energy in or not. So that is sort of the case for more than just that deck, in all fairness. This is Monica Bodersky's Between the Worlds. I have not finished, nope, I have not finished edging this. This is one of those I want to. My problem with this one I probably spoke of when I love this, and I think that if you're interested in getting into casting, this is a great tool to do so. But you really want cards, this is a great tool to do so. I really like everything about this. The thing is I have full functioning using charm sets. I have a bone casting set that I utilize. I have runes. I have things, items that I cast, and the what I like about that is the visceral feel of them and casting them. So I don't see myself. I'm keeping this in my collection of these types of cartomancy style symbol based decks, because there's not a ton of them and I love it. So I like the concept of this shadow casting with bone and curio. I think this is great. I think we needed a deck like this, because not everybody can or wants to have those things, and not everybody loves to cast, to be honest. It's a different style of divination, and a lot of people who are really card readers really prefer cards. And so I think this is a great bridge between those two things. But as somebody who has those things already that I cast, I'm not going to pull this out versus grabbing those other things and actually casting those charms. Does that make sense? So I'm really thrilled that this came out, but it's definitely not something I've used, and I see this going in more as a collection, and even to use in some classes where I'm talking about casting versus cards and using it in other capacities. So I don't intend to get rid of it, but I also don't see myself grabbing this over the other things that I cast. So I think it's a great bridge, but it's not gonna supersede the casting sets that I have. So that is a theme. I guess we kind of are hitting on some of these repeat themes. Now, this one I actually have out with the mushroom one, the Midnight Magic. This is, I don't even think I've done oh wait, have I done a walkthrough of this? I don't think I have. Earth and Bone. This might be on, no, it looks like I have. It's on my list. I don't know. Yes, I think I've done a walkthrough of this. I think this truthfully just got lost in the shuffle of things. I do want to work more with this. Again, this one in ancestral work, this one with, say, might get me using Beauty of the Bones more. This with Beauty of the Bones. This even with Midnight Magic Tarot. Even though it's so dark compared to the lighter tones, of the Mr. Freeborg one. But I do want to work with this more because this one really piques my interest. I think I didn't have it set in a space where I was think to grab it. So I have this out with this. And also, again, the Glowwood as ones that I want to make sure that I get some more time working with because it intrigues me. So I'm going to actually put that back where it is. Okay. I'm going to say the same. I do feel like I have a theme here. This is the same thing, right? So I do work a lot with playing card divination, but again, I have a very specific way of doing playing card divination, and I have my own deck that is playing card divination and that has fortune telling symbols that match the way that I read those particular symbols. And so this one is more of a cartomancy style deck, but it isn't directly as, and it says that, so this is not, it's not a surprise. It says that, right? These are more for, you know, finding the page number, finding the number, more like a numbering system than it is directly correlating the meaning of what the cartomancy indice with the symbol. So I love this. Again, I'm glad that these types of decks are continuing to come out and that we're not losing this style of reading because I love it. It's my heart, right? So I do really love that this deck is out there. It's mass market. It's got something that people can, you know, grab the guidebook. I love what he's done new here with that. But in the end, I'm going to grab Nellie's deck for any the types of reading that I'm going to use this for. I'm going to grab Nellie's deck. I made it for me. It suits exactly how I read playing cards and symbols and everything, right? When you make your own deck, it's because it suits you perfectly. And so I'm not going to pick a similar deck that I have to kind of work around other people's way of reading things versus my own deck. So I love this. I love that these types of decks are continuing to come out. I like to support those decks continuing to come out. I hope people pick them up and continue to read with that style of reading. But it just hasn't gotten a lot of time on the table. I've been using Nellie's deck for a while, but I just released it this year. So obviously, you know, it's just, I'm going to grab that. So that's the only thing about this. I like what's been done here, and I love that these types of decks are coming out, including this. Like, I like that these are coming out. Just as a cartomancer, I've got some things established, and so, or as a caster, I'm going to grab the casting instead. So that's all that really comes down to. Let's see. This is the Little Cryptids. I love this set. This set makes my heart so happy. The little book is adorable. The little tin is adorable. The backs are adorable. Like, everything about this I love. I have actually used this for myself. This is a little kind of deck, like, I just shuffled that in. This is a little kind, and I have done it with reversals. This is for me like inner child work. I have pulled some of these with Into the Lonely Forest, which it did work with it. It did go with it. Into the Lonely Forest is similar in the kind of sweet and cute monsters, but it does have a different feel to it. But I have pulled this for myself in those kind of inner child moments and leaning into that space. So I love this. Is this going to get a lot of time on my table? No, it's just not the kind of readings, like I'm not using this necessarily for clients, so it's not going to get the time on the table, right? Again, if you do readings, you know, 5 days out of the week, but they're readings, you know, that are specific to whatever the client has chosen, right? That's where the bulk of my readings go. So that the kinds of decks that I can use in those are always going to get more time on the table. So this hasn't had a ton of time on the table, but I have greatly enjoyed it. And it's just been more for me, a tap into inner child, but get good message while doing so. And I've enjoyed it greatly. This to me just makes me smile. And I do think that we need decks, and we need to have those types of decks around us that just make us smile while getting the messages that we need to hear. So I really love this deck a lot. Whoa. Now, I did not pull the box out for this. This is part of the Familiar's Way set. Now, this was just a review, a wasn't the final version. So I did a walkthrough of it with the deck. I haven't gotten yet. I think they're getting ready to come out, or should be close to coming out, where there's guidebooks and everything. So I haven't used, there's like 3 decks in it. One of them is a tarot deck, which I actually have used a couple times for clients. Again, I don't use a lot of just straight tarot readings anymore. And when I do, I tend to use specific ones, but I have used it a couple times and I enjoyed it. It kind of, for me, has a similar feel to, say, like Lightseer's Tarot. And so it works in those moments when I want something that feels a little more modern, which is not very often for me, but I do use those consistently. Like, again, the Lightseer's Tarot is one of those that I pull from, and I would put this on that same level of when I would grab it, and I have used it and enjoyed it. I have not used the Shadow much. I'm waiting for the guidebook on that. I just haven't done much with that deck. But this deck, which is the Animal Oracle, or for Animal Familiars, this hasn't left my table. I have it in this little test bag from my friend Deirdre, was testing the style of bag, and so I popped it in here, and it's not left my table since I did that review. I just like it a lot. Like, it's just, I like the size. I like the coloration. I like that there's no crown. It kind of has color tones of the Spirit Animals, the one by Colette Baron Reid, that I love for the number of cards and the color tones, but I don't love like all the crowns and things. So I like that this has got a similar color palette, so it goes with a lot of decks that I use, but it's just the animals. I love this, and this again has not left my table since I did that walkthrough. So I've used a tarot deck. Again, this is the Familiar's Way tarot or set. It's like the Familiar Way Tarot, Animal Oracle, and then there's a shadow work deck that's very different with black and more like loose sketches. I think that one probably needs the guidebook to get a lot out of that, so I'll come back to that once that I have that. But I've used the tarot a couple times, been happy with it in that context, but I absolutely love this. And again, it sits in this little bag on my desk, so that if when I just want to, and randomly I feel like there's an animal guardian stepping forward, I'll just grab one of these and throw it, into the reading. So love it. Use it a bunch. We're wrapping up. This is the Beloved Dead, which is an oracle for ancestral wisdom. I haven't pulled this. I think the reason why, I'm not a huge photography deck. Again, even though my Oracle of Place has photography in it, I'm not a big photography deck kind of reader. It's not like the style that pulls me. So the imagery itself isn't saying, oh my gosh, I have to pull that because I love it so much. And my problem is that I have very specific setups around, my ancestral readings. They really follow a format. They use very similar decks. I will pull on my main ancestral reading, I'll change out the top deck, but the main decks of the reading are very specific. They're very comfortable. They set me into the place for ancestral readings or I'm using my Journey Oracle also for ancestor reading. I just have very specific decks that I tend to go into for ancestral readings. So that means I'm just not, and they work for me, right? So I'm not overly inclined when I'm doing an ancestor reading to pull a new deck out for a client. Obviously, I want to be my fullest tapped in, so I don't want to practice on a client, so to speak. So I do want, but I'm not putting this away because I have shelves, you know, that have my favorite oracles, my favorite tarot, my history of tarot cubicle, cartomancy cubicle, and then I have a cubicle that has like the decks that I'm using all the time in terms of for readings of both oracle and tarot. And then I have a cubicle that has decks that I would like to work with more when I do have the time to grab something new. I want to give it a try. I want to work with it a little bit more. That has gotten overrun. And so one of my goals when I go to put this stuff away into my under the bed bins is to keep, you know, certain things are staying out, but thin that out so that I am not overwhelmed by that cubicle, so that I grab it more. So this is one of those that I do want to give it a go, because there's not a lot of really good ancestor type decks. And so I really want to give this a chance. I just literally have not pulled it out. So this is going to go in the pile that I was talking about, that, you know, I do want to give it some more table time. So I can see if that will step into a space in some way. I think this is my last one. Let me look over my list. Oh, there's one that's missing, which is the Magical Botanical Oracle. I had picked that up at Books A Million on my way down to the cabin. And I think that's where it is. I have looked high and low and cannot find it. I haven't used that a ton, but I do love the aesthetics of it is really appealing, but I have not used it. So I'll have to put that on the list to come back to. Again, it wasn't here, and it certainly wasn't where to think to grab it. In the case of when I would grab that deck, I have to say I tend to still go to the astrology, the herbal astrology oracle. I just really love that deck, and so I do just tend to still go to that herbal astrology oracle. I really love the deck. The coloration again is really goes with the other kinds of decks that I use, and so when I would pull that one, I'm still really leaning towards that other one. So I don't know if that's ever going to get pulled into something that I use all the time. My overall feeling is probably not, even though it's really cool. It feels a little bit more like Golden Dawn magic than, you know, Kitchen Witch or Hedge Witchy or kind of earthy. It has a little bit more of a high magic feel to it than an earthy magic. And whereas the herbal, while that does have a lot of astrological heightened energies, I don't know, it's one that I draw to more often, but I don't have that one here. My assumption is that it's at the cabin, because I had bought it and then taken it to the cabin where I have a box of decks, and I'd done the walkthrough there, and I think it just never made it back here. So that one is missing. I'm just was skimming through my list that I went to pull everything from. This is the Genius Garden Tarot that I did a walkthrough of. This for me is again similar to, say, the Light Seers Tarot, the Familiar's Way Tarot. It has, you know, more of a modern feel to it, although this one this one kind of leans a little bit. I need to put this out again on that shelf. I actually have used this, and it feels a little bit more like, let me see what the name of that is. The Tarot de St. Croix, which I love, but also this isn't actually the one I was thinking of. The Caro, Tarot by Caro. Tarot by Caro. Again, which I love, and I use that. I love this one as well. But it sits in that range. Like this one, I have enjoyed. I like the feel of it. I like what she's doing with it. I have used it in readings, not a ton. Again, I don't do a ton of just straight tarot readings. A lot of people get like past life readings, ancestor readings, web readings, readings that have like certain more oracle based with a tarot sprinkle, and that sprinkle is generally something that goes along like with the other oracle cards that are there. And I do general tarot readings, but it's definitely not high on the types of things that people come to me for. And so then I just have very, I have less time with pulling from a lot of different tarot decks. So I have used it. I have enjoyed it. I really like what she's done here. And it, for me, fits in that area of kind of great neutral space that I use, similar to like Tarot St. Croix, or again, like Tarot by Caro. Those are ones I like, and I use those when I'm feeling for that kind of energy, and this goes in that space. So I have enjoyed this. I haven't used it a ton, but I've enjoyed it when I have used it. So it's just like a good, it slides into a type of deck that I sometimes reach for. And so then it does occasionally get reached for. So that is the Genius Garden Tarot. So that is all of them. Who knows how long this is? I tried to keep moving along. I hope that it was helpful. Again, I really don't, again, a lot of these were given for purposes of review, but I also purchased a lot, and I don't regret ever experiencing a deck. There's always something to be learned, whether it's something that I grab a lot or I don't grab a lot. In those moments when it hits the spot for a reading, it's served its purpose, and I'm happy with that. And you have to be, I think, if you have a larger collection of decks. Not every deck is going to be the one that you go back to over and over and over and over and over again. And so it's more about for me. If you have a larger collection, it's more about curating and keeping access to those decks that every so often also you just like, that's the deck for the moment. And I'm perfectly happy with that. I'm content with that. So, very few have fallen into the category that I don't really see myself ever pulling from. And then the ones that I don't, it's for very specific reasons. Like I have my own deck and I'm going to grab that first, or I have casting things that I'm going to cast those things before I'm going to use a deck. So there's reasons why I wouldn't necessarily grab them, but I love what they're doing. So hopefully that has been of interest. Thank you for, 2023 in review, all the deck reviews, sticking with me on those. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes up in 2024. But I hope you've enjoyed this, and I wish you much joy in you working with the decks that you have.